Jeni, that 910 Steingarten Riesling, how did you see that particular wine?
Well, it's one of my favorites. And I think that's often, well, you know, it can be a plus or a minus. You see the name, you've been drinking it for decades. There are expectations that come with that, I think. And I think from that point of view, it was resolved when those expectations were met. It's still young though. I don't know whether Orlando would like to do some more museum releases, but I tasted it and I would certainly enjoy it now. But the potential was so much greater, I think, with that wine. Now my notes were a masterclass in what we perceive as minerality, that tang of stone or flint or slate, which is expressive aromatically and texturally. I think maybe we can talk a bit more about that, because so many people don't believe in mineral characters in wine. So I'd like Ben's opinion on that. But for me, it's there, and it's always there in Steingarten. And when you go to the vineyard, you can't help but make that visual connection too, with so many rocks and stones. It is a hard place and a high place. So you're getting those cool climate characters coming through. And that is in that kind of lime cordial intensity, apple blossom, the honeysuckle, the prettiest florals on this wine. And again, for 19, to see those coming through beautifully is a joy. Because for so many young Rieslings, all these things are just nice and, you know, tight and coiled. These are still nicely expressed as a young Riesling, which is why you could drink it now. But certainly the potential there is great.
I agree. Sometimes you see those Eden ones and they're just so tight.
So tight.
They're so
and the acid isn't that hard either. There's such a thing as, like, I call it soft acid, and it's not cutting you on the back of the throat. That's got that softness to me, and it's definitely there. Acid is part of the key to Steingarten and that cooler climate style, but it's a soft acid for me. But I would welcome Ben's idea on minerality. Come on, Ben.
Been thrown in the fire now, Ben.
Tell me I'm lying. Come on.
There's certainly some controversy about whether, you know, there is minerality in wine, or what is minerality. But I think if you look at some of the German Rieslings out of the Mosel, where they're growing on those amazing hills that are just slate, and they do seem to take on the flavour. In our minds, we think it is the stone. I think it might be something to do with the leanness of the soils, and the canopies in the vineyard aren't particularly big. They're not big, vigorous vines. There's that acidity that you're talking about. Try to get the acidity without the phenolic, so that it is that soft acidity you're talking about. And for me, that's where the minerality comes in. It's like a fineness, the focus of the acidity. And I think that's definitely got something to do with the soil. And I think it's probably to do with like the leaner soils that don't have a lot of nitrogen in them. And just producing a really well-balanced vine for the Riesling of that style. And it's about balance. And just, making sure you get the acidity without the phenolic character. And obviously acidity and phenolics play off against each other and exacerbate each other. So you get that hardness of acid, which is not particularly pleasant. And that's what we're aiming for in Steingarten, is the fineness of the acidity.
I think for me, with that wine, just screamed of food. It just screamed like I wanted to eat something with it. I mean, Shanteh, did you see that as a good food style?
Oh, absolutely. And I think, I think in terms of that wine, I'm so glad you brought up the acidity, because so often, other than acid junkies and people that are Riesling freaks, you do get a lot of guests that come in and perhaps want to go to a slightly different varietal because they don't want to stay on Riesling for so long. And that is just a wine that was so pure that you could happily have another bottle after another bottle all throughout the meal. But I mean, seafood, we always talk about seafood, but I think lots of different vegetables would work with that. Lots of kind of nice, kind of fresh, vibrant herbs, fresh cheeses. That could have an array of things that would work particularly well with it. And you're right, I think on its own too, the fineness of the acidity just means that you want to have another glass after another, if you can.
Tony?
Yeah, to me, I love this sort of discussion about minerality and the mouthfeel. I've always associated that sort of that talky, chalky minerality kind of thing. I've always had the impression that it's kind of like the pith of citrus fruits. So I always sort of associate the lemon, the lime, the grapefruit, whatever it might be, even, you know, Granny Smith apples, that sort of pithiness that you get in the mouth, which is a feel, you know, is it minerality? Is it pithiness? It's all those things. To me, it's part of the whole makeup of the wine. Do we try and dissect it? Yes, that's what we do. But in terms of a total drink, it all kind of comes together. You have that sort of, that orchard blossom to begin with, which is so classically Eden Valley. And you get that sort of, and then you get that sort of lemon lime thing. And every year that's going to be in every kind of different house style, that's going to be a different kind of, you know, sort of flavor, you know, sort of leaning one way or the other. For me, this was much more a lemon lip smack of lemon. And then you get that pithiness and as we say, as we sort of, you know, call it, minerality. And to me, it's just this total wine that expresses Eden Valley. And, you know, if you want to know, you know, and I guess Steingarten's been that for many, many years. It really has been that ambassador for Eden Valley Riesling for many, many years. And it's just great to see that it's still doing that. And I mean, I put it down to my notes just say, you know, I'd like, you know, this is going to be shining brightly at least for another 10 years, you know, in 10 years' time. I have a few little Rieslings in my my home cellar that are 10 years and 20 years, and sometimes I even find things that are 30 years old, amazingly. And they're just amazing wines, and they're just really an Australian icon for me. And I just loved it, and it's a really special moment to drink Steingarten. Jeni and I had the pleasure, gosh, I think it was probably 8 years ago, maybe 7 years ago, of
maybe a bit more.
Yeah, and we did a museum tasting of Steingartens, and they were just unbelievable. And my recollection still is 2002 just stood out as an amazing wine. I think the current vintage when we did it was 2012. I'm not sure now, and my archives don't go back. Notes don't go well back in that sort of way. But you know, it just augurs well for a fabulous future. And if we can just convince thousands and thousands of people to drink Riesling and drink older Riesling as well, and understand that white wine ages like this wine, the world will be a better place.